So the last time we talked about when to leave the dance floor. In other words, knowing when your time is up, being able to discern that as a leader, and stepping down or stepping aside. Well, today I want to talk about how to leave the dance floor. And don't forget, you leave the dance floor, as the African saying goes, while people are still enjoying your dance. But how do you leave the dance floor? I want to share a couple of mindsets that have helped me to do this, leaving on the dance floor, what people call succession planning. But technically, it's more, a better term is succession management, because management is a cycle, right? Comprising of three things: planning, implementation, and evaluation. So succession planning is not enough. There has to be the planning, there has to be the implementation, there has to be the evaluation. So I'm with those who say succession management. But for now, I'm using the idiomatic expression, leaving the dance floor. I've had to do this several times. Actually, I'm doing this recording on 31st May 2021, which is actually the last day in office as president of International Student Ministries Canada. I've done this for 8 years, and there's a new president taking over from tomorrow. The board issued a statement to say that a year ago, I gave them notice that I'll be leaving this role. And that is one thing to do. So long as it's not an emergency, it's good to give output time, for the planning to be done, for the searching to be done. And as president, I made inputs. I even suggested, someone for the role, because I believe it's one of the things you should do. And I'll talk about that shortly. But two mindsets that have helped me to do succession planning well, not only in terms of this role that I'm, handing over today, but I've had to do that, work with a church in Montreal, which I pastored for 4 years, and get a new pastor to take over from me. At a time when everybody was saying, it's okay, you can stay, we like you. I knew it was time to leave. I knew it was time to leave the dance floor, and did help to do the succession planning to get a new pastor who's thrived, who's doing very well, here in the city of Montreal. I've had to do this several times, not only in Canada, in Ghana. When I founded the Heart Group with 8 others. After 5 years, I handed over to somebody else in Ghana, and then left for Cote d'Ivoire to work with the United Nations. And then there as well, after a year, I found somebody, handed over. That transition was a bit tricky, but still happened by God's grace. And then came to Canada, started the Heart Group in Canada, found someone to hand over to as a country CEO, so I could take a global role. So I've done this several times in my life across several countries and even continents. Two mindsets that have helped me. Number one is this, and this one I picked up from John Maxwell maybe 20 years ago, and it's made a big difference in the way I have thought about succession planning and have done it. Number one is that success is measured by succession. As a leader, your success is actually measured by succession. What happens when you are gone? Now, when you have that kind of mindset, you want to do succession management well. The planning of it, the implementation of it, the evaluation of it, because what happens when you're gone is your fault, so to speak. And when you think this way, then you don't end up like the many African leaders who actually, and it's not just African, but I see that a lot in Africa, who actually want things to go bad when they leave office, so that people will say, oh, when XYZ was here, things were better, or things were so much, on the go, or whatever it is. You don't want your successor to look bad in order that you look good. That is really bad leadership. A leader's success is measured by succession. And when you have that mindset, you do all you can to make sure succession goes well. That the changing of the guard, or the changing of the dancers on the dance floor goes well. So number one, leadership success is measured by succession. Leadership success is measured by succession. The second mindset that has really helped me is funny. It's as simple as ABC. ABC means always be closing. And I picked this up from, I used to be a consultant for Investors Group in Canada, and the leader of my team, an Italian guy, this was one of his mantra. He would always say, always be closing. You know, he was a sales guy. He really was good at sales. And there's no point in not closing a sale after doing all the work and all the talking, all the prospecting, whatever you've done to get through the sales cycle. And so he says to be able to close the sale at the end, you've got to think of closing the sale throughout the process. Right at the beginning, you are already closing. In the middle of the conversation, as you motivate and disturb, you're already closing until the end. So he says, always be closing. ABC. And I find that this applies to doing good succession planning and implementation. I find it's good for knowing how to leave the dance floor, because right as soon as you take a role, always be closing. Begin with the end in mind. Begin to already think, who can replace me? Because guess what? The next day you might be hit by a bus and be gone. All right? Or even if you stay for 8 years like I have, you will still leave one day. Listen, no matter how good you are, one day you will not be there. Think about it. All good leaders still die. All great leaders still die. So we need to think, always be closing. Begin with the end in mind. And even when I took my role in this current role that I'm handing over today, I already began to look for who can take my place. And I actually identified a couple of people, and I actually did tell one of them that, you know, I have my eye on you, you know, to replace me. Of course, in our process, at the end of the day, it's the board that makes the decision. But I would make sure that I do not leave a position with no option for the board to make a pick. So remember that. How do you leave the dance floor? It's by good succession management, planning, implementation, evaluation. Now, these two mindsets will help you. Number one, leadership success is measured by succession. Number two, always be closing. Begin this succession with the end in mind. Right from the start, be thinking handing over. God bless as we lead right, as we lead strong, as we lead in a transformative way. Know when to leave the dance floor and how to leave the dance floor.